Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Friday morning to you all. I hope you guys are waking up and having a wonderful start to your day, and I hope everyone's been having a great week out there as we're heading off into our new weekend. Before we do, we have to get through a day and night of severe weather chances across the southeast and the mid-Atlantic. This is an area of the country that has not seen as much severe weather compared to our neighbors to the west, like in the middle of the country. So today will be our day, and I say our day because I live here in central South Carolina, so I'm right in the heart of this severe weather threat for today into tonight. So we're going to get detailed on this right off the dot. We'll speak on the latest from the Storm Prediction Center. As far as the outlook, just note that this could change. I could see this going up to an enhanced risk sometime in the next update or two this morning. If it does, I imagine it'll be for damaging winds, but we'll speak on that as we go. After we get done talking about the outlook, we'll break it down state by state, at least a couple states at a time for you folks, get you guys a really good idea as far as the timing, intensity of these storms, and then we'll talk about the rest of the country, and then we'll speak on the severe weather chance days to come, because there is a few areas we need to watch for as we get into especially early next week, and then we'll give you an update on the tropics. I'm still watching the Gulf into the Caribbean for some tropical development as we get into like the first 10 days of June. So we'll speak on all that, get you guys covered. If you folks have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. If anybody has anything that I can pray about or pray over, please put it in the comments below. I appreciate the prayers. I mentioned yesterday it's been a rough week, just a challenging week, I would say. It's hard to say it's been a rough week because people are going through so much worse. But our AC went out. And that's not a huge deal at all, honestly. It hasn't been too hot here in South Carolina. I call here in central South Carolina the armpit of hell, and we haven't quite hit that criteria of heat around here quite yet, so that's good. But also, new puppy, Copper or Husky, he's been chewing on cords, so disconnecting stuff left and right. But that's typical, when you get a new puppy, that's going to happen. So all of it's pretty much expected. And of course, your AC unit's going to go out from time to time. But just been a little bit of a challenging week. So I appreciate the prayers. We'll get through it, and life moves on. It's just a typical small blows in life. Could be much worse. So I definitely appreciate the prayers. But let's get rocking and rolling. So it's the latest from the Storm Prediction Center outlook, and we'll obviously zoom in on the southeast and mid-Atlantic first. We got a large slight risk stretching from a very small section of the Panhandle of Florida, southeast areas of Alabama, includes a good chunk of Georgia through the Carolinas, all the way up into areas of Virginia, even southern Maryland, all the way up to D.C., very small section, I can't speak, of Delaware and portions of the Tidewater and Delmarva region. So it does include a very small section of West Virginia, but slight risk. This could tweak some. Like I said, if we do upgrade to an enhanced risk, it would show up in orange, and it would likely be for an increased risk of damaging winds. Right now, tornado threat did increase. Let's broaden this out a little bit. If you live in this green area, which includes all of the northern half of Georgia, eastern areas of Kentucky. In fact, we have an ongoing tornado warning right now, at least at the time I'm making this video, in central Kentucky right now. But eastern Kentucky, 2% risk of a tornado, a good chunk of West Virginia. All of Virginia runs a risk of a tornado, and this does sneak into the Delmarva area. But a little bit of a heightened risk of a tornado in this region right here in Virginia and North Carolina. So if you live in this brown region, that is a 5% risk of a tornado. It includes Richmond, almost up to Charlottesville, down to Danville, all the way into the Winston-Salem, Raleigh-Durham area. So a little bit of a higher risk of a tornado here. And I wouldn't be surprised if this kind of tweaks around, moves around a little bit, and they expand this 5% risk area somewhat. So we'll certainly see if they do that. As of right now, it's not the case. But damaging wind risk, this entire slight risk area. This yellow area, that is a 15% risk of winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour within 25 miles in any given location. And this does include Atlanta to Columbia, Augusta, down to Dothan, Alabama, through pretty much everybody in North Carolina, just about. And it does get all the way up to the D.C., Virginia Beach, Norfolk, Roanoke, Richmond, Charlottesville area, so Fredericksburg, 15% risk of damaging winds. The hail threat today, it's a little bit more so for, I would say, Virginia into central North Carolina into South Carolina, all the way through Georgia. So if you live in that yellow area, that is a 15% risk of hail exceeding 1 inch in diameter or larger. We'll make this a little bit sometimes you zoom in too much on weather-wise. It just everything gets everywhere. So here's a larger look at it. 15% risk of hail exceeding 1 inch in diameter or larger within 25 miles in a given location in this area. Now, I will take a look at everybody else too. I will mention there's a marginal risk up here. A level 1 out of 5 risk of severe weather for areas of Wisconsin down into Illinois and Indiana in that dark green area. And then we do have a risk of severe weather for areas of extreme western Texas and New Mexico, but nothing really compared to what we've seen. And we do have that level 1 out of 5 risk of severe weather for areas of Louisiana, southeast Texas, and southern Mississippi and Alabama. So now let's break it down state by state. This is starting off around 10 a.m. in Mississippi and Alabama. So we'll begin to move this in time. We take it to about lunchtime. Could begin to get some thunderstorm activity from Birmingham, points northeast in Alabama. But as we're starting to move through about mid to late afternoon, it's around 4 p.m. Central Time, some storms could begin to repop up down near Hattiesburg, maybe Montgomery. But it looks like if any widespread thunderstorm activity gets going, it's probably going to be in the southern portion, extreme southern areas of Mississippi and Alabama, getting into the panhandle of Florida. Doesn't show much developing later in the evening for anywhere else in the state, but I did just want to show you Alabama, Mississippi, because, you know, any storms that do get going here in the southern areas of these two states could pack a punch. Florida, we're going to just get pop-up activity throughout most of the afternoon. Your pattern's been about the same. So just kind of a stagnant flow down here, typical summer type stuff where these thunderstorms sort of pop up, pop off some outflow boundaries, and then initialize more storms. So could get some storms near Palm Bay, down near Port St. Lucie, and it could extend all the way down to West Palm Beach. And these storms could just dance around, especially in the eastern sections of the peninsula of Florida. But I do want to watch later this evening a more organized area of thunderstorms could begin to sweep south through Tallahassee and just the entire panhandle coastline. And eventually these will make it down to Jacksonville. It's like 1 o'clock in the morning, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So basically, if you live in the northern half of Florida, could have a sweeping line of storms from midnight all the way to about daybreak tomorrow morning. So just be aware of that. Now, this is when the risk of severe weather certainly begins to increase in Georgia and South Carolina. We'll start off around 10 a.m. We'll take it to about lunchtime. You see the thunderstorms up there in northern Georgia. Nothing too serious yet, but we take it to about 2 p.m. And already early this afternoon, a line of storms could be sweeping through Atlanta, Athens, Rome, Noonan. I mean, there was even a tornado south of Atlanta yesterday. They got it on film across the interstate and everything. It didn't look like anything too serious, but I mean, it just tells you that even on these low tornado risk days, you can get a tornado. And in fact, I think that area was even outside the 2% risk area. But there will be enough overlapping ingredients to support a tornado risk. You see this one isolated cell showing up on this one run of the H-R model. You got to watch out for these isolated cells. You get to about 4 p.m., storms start to inch closer to Macon, Augusta, Columbia. This is 5 p.m., blast through the Midlands of South Carolina, kind of sinking south throughout central and east central Georgia. And then these storms will make it to Florence. It looks like one clean sweep through. So I don't think it's going to be like multiple rounds of thunderstorms. It just looks like, for example, North Georgia, upstate of South Carolina early in the afternoon, more so middle Georgia, middle South Carolina, central the Midlands, around mid to late afternoon, 5 p.m., rush hour time, unfortunately. And then we take it into about 7 p.m. A lot of this action. And listen, even though it doesn't show a line of storms in South Georgia, I mean, I very well could see a well intact line of storms where it's hardly showing anything. But these storms will try to get all the way to the coastal areas of Georgia, South Carolina by the time the sun is setting. So one clean sweep through, it really looks like. Now, this is the area where our tornado threat begins to increase. North Carolina, Virginia. So we start to get about lunchtime. We got thunderstorms moving across the mountains of Tennessee, North Carolina, Virginia, West Virginia, Kentucky. We take it to about 3 p.m. This is where we get this line of storms. It tries to get organized, moving through western and central North Carolina. And you see these sort of circle lines coming off some of these cells where we have more intense updrafts, potentially more intense thunderstorms, potentially rotating updrafts, a tornado risk, which makes sense because that is right where our 5% risk area is. So Greensboro, Raleigh, up to Danville, all the way up to Richmond. You gotta be careful in this area right here around 5 p.m. this afternoon. If there's going to be a tornado, I would bank on the highest risk being in this area right here. But 6 p.m., 7 p.m., lines of storms sweeping through eastern North Carolina, they could be, right through Greenville at this point, kind of moving east at this point of Fayetteville and Raleigh. Virginia Beach getting hit by storms around maybe 7 to 8, 9 p.m. And we could have additional development later in the evening in eastern and southeastern Virginia and eastern North Carolina here. But it definitely could end up looking different than this. We could have individual cells firing off kind of out ahead of this, but this is kind of the look that these storms will most likely take today. Now, we head on up the road a little bit more up into, say, Maryland, northern VA, and the Delmarva and Tidewater area, or really the Delmarva. 3 p.m., 4 p.m., 5 p.m., 6 p.m., boom, there's a stormy looking afternoon, early evening period in northern VA, getting into central Maryland, Winchester up to Hagerstown. And then we take it and look at a couple of these storms. It's around 7 p.m. That looks like a powerful thunderstorm right outside the D.C. area, Baltimore region. See that cell right here showing up in pink, whitish, indicating more intense thunderstorm development. And this is around 8 p.m. Just looks like a very active thunderstorm-filled evening here in the D.C. and Baltimore area for sure. And we get to 10 p.m. Looks like a whole lot of heavy rain going up the I-95 corridor from Baltimore up to Wilmington. Dover getting a lot of thunderstorm activity. Could get another round later tonight. This is 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. More heavy rain sweeping through this area. And there's going to be a tornado threat in this area too today, guys. Lacking a little bit more in the way of thermodynamics. But there'll definitely be plenty of wind energy up in this region. A little bit better directional flow, if you will, because of a surface low. But the updraft Felicity swath, this is starting off around midday, but I want you to look at all those slashes throughout the area. And this is just one run, but it really highlights an area of more intense updraft development here in northern North Carolina, southern Virginia. But there's a couple streaks here through South Carolina, even Georgia earlier this afternoon. So this entire region, I'll just kind of circle a couple areas. This entire region, just watch out for some tornadoes for today for sure. So especially kind of right here in this area. But really what's driving this is just a really intense pulse of low-level flow will rumble through this region. So this is around this afternoon. This is in the low levels of the atmosphere, so 4,000 to 6,000 feet above our heads in this region. We got a lot of energy. You got this 60, 70 knot jet kind of pivoting through this area. This will really fuel a damaging wind threat with these storms. It looks really intense in Georgia and South Carolina. So, like I said, would not be surprised if they throw out an enhanced risk for a higher wind threat, damaging wind threat throughout this area. And then we'll just get a lot of strong wind gusts just in these storms. So you look at this and you say, okay, there's a lot of wind energy with these storms today. You see the purple slashes of red, yellow, a lot of wind energy in the atmosphere. And this will be overlapping. I don't know what we got going on here. This will be overlapping a very moist environment as we start to get into this afternoon. One last surge of moisture up the I-95 corridor. Dew points will get all the way into the 60s into southern New England. But dew points will be in the 60s and even some 70s across the deep south and southeast and mid-Atlantic. So tons of moisture in the atmosphere, thermodynamic energy for sure to fuel and to be overlapped by that intense wind field moving over the area. So that's an update on the severe weather threat for the southeast. Now, let's continue to move forward here for the northeast. I'm going to adjust my chair if I can go higher. Maybe not. But the northeast today, it's pretty quiet, but then we get some rain that does move through West Virginia, Ohio, western PA, and there could be some intense thunderstorms in West Virginia, but it might just be a solid rainfall. Some thunderstorms are possible in southern New England today, and then here comes a lot of thunderstorm activity surging up through New Jersey. So New Jersey, you will get thunderstorms today. Delaware, I've already mentioned Delaware a little bit, but I didn't say much about New Jersey, but late this evening into the overnight hours could have a sweeping line of storms. In fact, I could see them increasing the severe weather threat a little bit further north into southeast PA and New Jersey. But we're going to have a line of storms that could sweep through. You see that surface low. This is like midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. I would say closer to 1 to 2 o'clock in the morning. I know it says the time up here, but I always like to kind of do a balance of a couple hour period because I don't want to be exact. But a big slug of heavy rain because of this surface low moves into just southern areas of New England, the Northeast. And by the time we're waking up tomorrow morning, we're going to be waking up to some gusty winds and just a pretty deep low pressure over the Northeast, except this is kind of going more so inland compared to the one a couple weeks ago, a week and a half ago, or whatever it was. But this is just a big area of heavy moisture kind of moving across the Northeast as we're waking up tomorrow morning with the surface low cruising right over southern New England. So definitely a wet start to our weekend up here. South Central U.S., not going to zoom in anybody here. What's left over of these thunderstorms this morning will exit off out into the northwest Gulf here. And then we're probably going to get some more thunderstorm development. It tries to get going deep down in southwest Texas. This is later this evening. And could get some thunderstorm development in New Mexico, even though it's not really showing much. Certainly possible. Some storms could dance around on the Gulf coastline too here. But outside of that, I would say that it's going to be a much quieter day across the southern plains, south central U.S. compared to what we've seen. Now up here in the north central U.S., a little bit of a frontal boundary kind of sweeps through. This will initiate some showers across the UP of Michigan this morning into eventually into lower Michigan. But there could be just enough kind of oomph in the atmosphere to get some thunderstorms going from Green Bay down to Milwaukee, down to Chicago. It doesn't look like much on this run, but just be careful in this corridor. Could get some small hail, cold air aloft. Could get some thunderstorms if you live in this region right here, even though, this particular run doesn't show a whole lot at all. But it's not always going to show exactly what's going to happen. It never does, but you know what I'm saying. Sometimes it does a really good job. Sometimes it don't. Western U.S., some heavy rain, some thunderstorm activities possible to fire off the front range here once again, but not expecting much in the way of active weather in regards to that. Nothing too crazy at all. But temperatures, most of the country is pretty warm besides just areas that are kind of just stopped up in clouds and rain. So in that area, it looks to be kind of the central apps here, west and east of it. But if you can get out of the way of all this cloud cover and rain, you warm on up. Even if you got clouds, if you kind of get to just better moisture in the atmosphere, you're going to still warm up into the 70s and 80s. For example, here in the Carolinas, especially here in central South Carolina, it's been a very cloudy week, but it's warmed up each day. But the Northeast, certainly 60s, 70s, the middle of the country, just 70s and 80s. And the rest of the country is just warm. So I will mention there's severe weather possibilities for tomorrow, too, across the mid-Atlantic. So this is tomorrow's outlook, and tornado threat, not much with any of this, and there is a severe weather threat across the central and southern high plains. But just right now, we got even a level 1 out of 5 risk of severe weather in southern Florida. But tomorrow doesn't look too bad. Now, we start to get into day 3, which is Sunday. This is when a pattern begins that could be active for the northern sections of the country. So we do have a level 1 out of 5 risk of severe weather in areas of Montana, Wyoming, and Idaho. And there is a level 1 out of 5 risk of severe weather deep down in Texas. But then as we start to get into day 4, nothing much has changed. This is for Monday. We have a 15% risk of severe weather within 25 miles of any given location across areas of Nebraska, the Dakotas, and to Minnesota. And we're going to speak more heavy on this in the days to come throughout the weekend. And then day 5, this is Tuesday, we run a 15% risk of severe weather across areas a little bit further south across the plains from southeast Nebraska all the way down into northern areas of Texas. And really, these 2 days have not changed much compared to like yesterday morning's video. So an update on the tropics. No tropical activity expected between now and the next 7 days, so that's good. But I will mention there's a couple areas to watch. You're not going to be able to see much off the Euro, for example, but I'm going to start this off around next Thursday morning, so the morning of June the 5th. I just want you to kind of keep your eyes, I'm going to draw on this a little bit. I want you to kind of keep your eyes on like this area right into here as I move the time frame through. So starting to get into next weekend, not this weekend, next weekend, not a whole lot, but you're seeing some moisture sort of dancing around down here in the central and western Caribbean. And then you're seeing more moisture as you're starting to get past day 10. Like this is getting into the morning of June the 9th, which is pretty far out, guys. And just you're starting to see more kind of just blobs of moisture down here. It looks like something's trying to get going. And this energy sort of, hanging out around the Yucatan, areas of Central America, getting to the Bay of Campeche, but nothing ever really fully gets going. And I could definitely see more so that happen. A better way to look at this is energy at about the mid-levels of the atmosphere, about 18,000 feet up in the air. You can see if you look at sort of these yellowish orange areas, this is energy in the atmosphere. You can see little impulses of energy down here. This is where, we got this broad area of low pressure, and sometimes more intense areas of energy can get on one side of it. It can either get on the kind of the Caribbean side or the Eastern Pacific side, and sometimes they can get going, and this happens this time of the year. But you take it all the way to about the evening of the 13th, and looks like we have some energy trying to get going, but man, it is so far out. Now, meanwhile, you got the crazy uncle here, the GFS, the drunk uncle, right? And we're starting off around the same time, and this is the latest GFS run. So we'll start off here Thursday morning, June the 5th. Now it wants, and this is about the third or fourth run in a row, it wants to pop off a tropical storm by around this time next week. Now it's really next Saturday morning. It wants to have a big hurricane in the in the Eastern Pacific right here, and it also wants a tropical storm developing here in the Caribbean. And then it develops into a hurricane as it splits the gap between Cuba and the Yucatan. And then it wants to develop it into a major hurricane as it gets into the Gulf. And then it wants to plow a hurricane on June 11th into the Gulf coastline in the evening of June the 10th. So the GFS is still doing this crazy stuff. Now, I am never going to sit here and say that this is completely not possible, okay? Because, it's hard to say that when it comes to weather. Some crazy things can happen, but I doubt that this is going to happen. And the GFS, this is what the GFS shows at 282 hours out. Let's see. That's what it shows. So nothing like what that is showing, except blobs of moisture down here. But at the same time, we have a favorable... Sorry about all that noise. At the same time, we do have a favorable MJO pulse moving over this area of rising air. So if you look at the Euro ensemble, it does show a few members, and this only goes about 240 hours out. So this is 10 days out, which is about as far out as we need to look. It does show a few members. The Euro ensemble makes up about 50 members and only shows about 5 members doing something on the Atlantic side. Now, if we turn around and we look at, say, the GFS ensemble, and let's see if we're in that same time period. Which one is this? I believe this is the OOZ. It shows a lot more members. But then again, the GFS ensemble normally follows its operational run, which its operational run is showing a raging hurricane in the Gulf in about 10 to 12 days. So we'll continue to try to figure this one out, guys. That's all I got. Thank y'all for tuning in. Appreciate y'all. Appreciate the prayers and everything going on. Hopefully we can get the flow back going with the channel. I feel like I've been off lately, but appreciate the encouragement. And you guys stay safe today across the eastern U.S. with this severe weather. God bless.